Sleeves. They're confusing, right? What do all the curves mean? Why are some sleeves more curved than others? How curved should your sleeve be? But sleeves are important, and I think nothing ruins a beautiful dress or top more than a weird looking sleeve. You know, when it's tight across the top, or it's gaping at the bottom, or if you've got too much ease and you can't gather it in, so you've got these gathers at the top. If you've done any pattern cutting, you know what I'm talking about. When I started pattern cutting, I found sleeves really difficult because they're all so different, right? And I did some shocking sleeves when I started, but that's how you learn. These are two sleeves I created for my Clicked pattern kits. On the left is my one dart fitted dress block sleeve, and on the right is my oversized shirt block, and they couldn't be more different. If you've watched other sleeve drafting videos or done a course or read a book, you probably learnt one method and one set of standard measurements to create a sleeve. But there is no one size fits all for sleeves. I learned how to draft sleeves at St. Mun's, which is one of the best fashion schools in the world. But the problem with someone just giving you one set of measurements is you have no idea how to customize it, right? And if you're pattern cutting, you want to customize your sleeve to your design, not just your armhole size. So today, you are going to learn to think like a pattern cutter. I'll be sharing with you the methods and measurements I perfected over the years to make any sleeve, from super fitted, skin tight sleeves to the comfiest sweatshirt. Now, a warning, this video is going to get detailed. Once you finish watching this video, I want you to be able to make any sleeve for your design. So we're going to be covering a lot more than just fitting a basic sleeve into your armhole. And once you follow these steps and master drafting a sleeve and create the basic shape, you can then get creative and add design features. Like these ones I made while working at McQueen. I've broken the process down into 3 stages, and I've timestamped it below, as well as some key screens you're definitely going to want to screenshot. I'll start by explaining cap height. Cap height determines what style of sleeve you're going to create, so I'll tell you what it is and how to pick the right amount for your design. Then I'll do a step-by-step demo of how to draft a sleeve. It won't just be one set of measurements. I'll show you how to adapt the curves in the sleeve head for different cap heights to create different styles. And we'll have a look in the Queen block, and I'll tell you why you shouldn't use it. Once we've drafted our sleeve, I'll share some fitting tips and tell you what to look out for. And it's no fun watching a professional pattern cutter draft the perfect sleeve and then put it on a mannequin and be like, oh look, see, perfect. So I'm going to completely mess up my sleeve. Why? To show you how easy it is to fit your sleeve on a mannequin. And hopefully this will give you the confidence to give it a go yourself. You can do this. And if you follow these steps, you'll be able to draft a sleeve better than half the sewing patterns out there. So let's get started. What is cap height? So the cap height is the distance between the top of the sleeve and the underarm line. Some people call the underarm line the bicep line, but I find that a bit misleading as it isn't always at the bicep. And it might surprise you to know that both sleeves on the screen have almost the same cap height. How can that be? Why would 2 very different sleeves have the same cap height? Because cap height isn't a set measurement. It's based on 2 factors. Your total armhole measurement, so front and back, and this is divided by the sleeve style value. So if you've watched any sleeve drafting videos before, you know the first step is to measure your armhole, because your sleeve needs to fit into your armhole. But what do I mean by sleeve style value? When I say sleeve style value, I mean the type of sleeve you want to create. Is it really tailored for a fitted dress? Or do you want a more loose blouse kind of vibe, or a casual t-shirt, or a more relaxed sweatshirt? Your type of sleeve can match your silhouette, so if you have a fitted dress, you can make a fitted sleeve, but it doesn't have to. But you need to know what kind of style of sleeve you're going to make before you start drafting your sleeve. And once you've decided, you can use these values to work out your cap height. Now, I want you to press pause and write these values down. This is the most important thing you'll learn in this video today. And nobody else seems to be talking about this. They all just give you a set measurement for your cap height, but these values allow you to decide what your sleeve looks like. And they're just a guide, so you can go anywhere in between these numbers. So let's go back and look at my block examples to see which style values I used. Let's look at the fitted dress first. My total armhole measurement is 41.1 centimeters, and I divided this by the style value of 3.2. Why did I use 3.2? Well, this is a fitted dress block, so I had to make a fitted dress sleeve. And I find really tailored sleeves, so ones with cap heights of 2.8 or 3, are kind of hard to work with. because they have so much ease. And we'll talk more about ease when we start drafting our sleeve. But I like to use a 3.2 style value for fitted sleeves. It's just more comfortable to wear and easier for you to sew. So when I divide the armhole measurement by the style value, I get 12.8 centimeters cap height. Same for the oversized shirt block. My armhole measurement is 51.3 centimeters. It's a lot bigger because it's oversized and has a dropped armhole. And my style value was 4.2 because it's a loose style. And when I divide the two, I get a cap height of 12 centimeters. So now you know how to work out your cap height, and it should be different for each design. But what does it all mean? Well, the cap height changes the angle of the sleeve. Watch this. On the left is the front of my fitted dress block, and on the right is the front of my oversized shirt block. Now, if I lie the sleeves on top, so the top of the sleeve is touching the top of the armhole, like I would if I was sewing them together, you can see the different angles. The shirt sleeve is sitting further away from the body. So the greater the style value, the more your sleeve will sit away from the body. And this means you can move more. Think of t-shirts and sweatshirts. They're really comfy, right? Which sounds great. So why don't we do that for every sleeve? Because the further your sleeve sits away from the body, the more fabric there is under the armpit. Have a look at this oversized shirt block. See how all the fabric excess is there? Which is fine for a shirt. That's what you want. It's the kind of the look. But if you were doing an evening wear or formal kind of dress, you wouldn't want all the excess under the armhole. So hopefully you have a good understanding of cap height now and how to apply it to your design. And if you don't, please leave a comment below. Let's start drafting our sleeve. The first thing to do is measure your armholes on the front and back. And I'm going to use my one dart fitted dress block for this demonstration. But before we begin, now would be a good time to check the shape of the armhole. Sometimes what appears as a sleeve issue can actually be an armhole issue. And you can use your French curve to draw the shape, but before you can put it on, you need to know the shoulder and underarm point. The underarm point is up to you. For a fitted style, I like 1.5 to 2 centimeters above the bust line, but some fitted dresses I've seen, like the McQueen block, are really high, like 4 centimeters, but I find 1.5 to 2 centimeters is really comfy. For the shoulder point, if you're measuring from the inner neck here, the shoulder seam is about 12 centimeters long, but you can customize it for your own measurements. The main thing you want to make sure is that your shoulder seam, so the armhole, is finishing at the top of the shoulder bone here. The last thing you need to position your French curve correctly is the across chest and back measurement. These measurements are taken from the center of the body to the middle of the armhole, which is about 14 centimeters below the shoulder point at the neck. And you just measure down and then across. The back is usually slightly like 0.5 or 1 centimeters bigger than the front, and mine are both around 17 centimeters, and this is for a sample size 8. So if you make this pattern for you, measure your own body, and you'll need someone to help you with the across back measurement, obviously. But make sure you check this now. This is, if you've got a really fitted design, the cross back and cross front can be really big tension area, so it's best to get it right now. And obviously it can be hard to find your center front and center back, so measure across the whole body and then divide it by 2 if your pattern is a pair or if it's on the fold. Then you can place your French curve over the points and draw your armhole. It's also a good idea to check the seams look nice when they're sewn together, and you can do that by simply lining the patterns on top of each other. Okay, my armhole's looking great, so let's measure them. My front is 19.4 centimeters, and my back is 21.7. So the total is 41.4 centimeters. I'll then grab a piece of pattern paper, big enough to fit my sleeve pattern. I'm doing a full length sleeve so I can show you everything, but if yours is short, just get enough paper for what you need. I'm going to show you the fitted cap height sleeve head curves first. So I'll divide my total armhole measurement, which was 41.4 centimeters, by 3. So the cap height will be 13.7 centimeters. And I'll draw a line 13.7 centimeters long at the top of the long edge of my paper. I'll then draw a long perpendicular line at the base, about 40 centimeters long. This is the top half of my sleeve. I'll then write F for front on one side and B for back on the other side, so I don't forget. On the front side, I'll put my ruler at the top of the sleeve and rotate it till 19.4 centimeters, which was my front armhole measurement, hits the horizontal line. I'll then draw a line. And I'll do the same thing on the back, but using the back armhole measurement. If you're making a really fitted sleeve, now would be a good time to check the underarm is bigger than your bicep measurement. All you need to do is measure your arm at the widest point, so usually somewhere up here, and then add some ease. I'd add a minimum 2 centimeters, maybe 4. How much ease you add is really up to you and how you want to feel in the sleeve. Now go back to your pattern and measure your underarm line. If it's smaller than your bicep measurement plus ease, you'll need to increase the length of the line and redraw the diagonal lines at the top. They need to be the same length as the armhole, so all you're going to do is decrease the cap height, so you have more room to move. Once you've checked the bicep and your underarm line's all good, you can then divide both those diagonal lines into 4. So on the front, my armhole measurement was 19.4, so I'll divide 19.4 by 4, which is 4.85 centimeters. So I'll just measure 4.85 centimeters and mark it, and measure it again and again, so that there are 3 marks and the line is evenly divided into 4. And I'll do the same thing on the back. So my back armhole measurement was 21.7 centimeters, divided by 4 is 5.4 centimeters, and I'll mark those 3 points too. Why divide by 4? It just gives lots of points to measure up from. 5 would be too many, 3 wouldn't be accurate, 4 is just a good way to do it. So now I'll start drawing my curves. To help guide the shape of the curves, I'm going to add some points. At the top mark on the back here, I'll draw a 1.9 centimeter line perpendicularly out from the mark. At the next point, I'll draw a perpendicular line 1.2 centimeters out. At the last mark, I'll draw a line in by 0.3 centimeters. I find students often find this last bottom curve a bit hard to draft, so I like to give a 5th measurement here. In the middle of the last section at the bottom, draw a line in by 0.5 centimeters. Then on the front, I'll draw out 1.5 centimeters at the top mark, then 0.5 centimeters at the next mark, and then I'll draw a line in by 0.8 centimeters at the bottom. And I'll do the same thing on the front here. Just mark a point in the middle of the last section at the bottom and draw a line in by 0.9 centimeters. Okay, now I'll use the French curve to connect my points. And just need to switch pencils. So use the French curve to get you started. Then I usually go freehand. The French curve can only get you so far. And when you're finished, you'll see the top back here comes out further than the front. Then there is a straight section in the center. Then the front bottom is more scooped than the back. And that kind of makes sense, right? If you think about how the armhole works, we slightly curve in a bit at the front. I mean, I do need to work my posture. But because you curve in a bit more, you need less on the sleeve head. However, I have seen people teach and books show that the sleeve head should be further out, so more curved on the front. That's not what I've experienced, but everybody's different, so maybe that works for you. And if you think about the bottom of the armhole, I mean, you can't see, but if you feel the back of your armhole, it's very flat, right? While the front is more curved, especially in women because you need to get over the bust. So you want to curve out that front armhole more to get rid of some of the excess, so there's not as much fabric underneath the armhole. When I measure the curves, you see the front is 20.4 centimeters and the back is 22.5 centimeters. However, the front armhole of my dress is 19.4 centimeters. So the sleeve is actually 1 centimeter bigger on the front. This will be my ease. And the back sleeve is 22.5 centimeters, which is 0.8 centimeters bigger than the 21.7 centimeter armhole. Okay, it's a lot of numbers, but essentially my sleeve has 1.8 centimeters of ease. I like to have max 1.8 centimeters of ease in total, and that's probably a good guide for you, especially if you're sewing your own sleeve. I find any more than that, and it's really hard to ease in. You'll get those little gathers, you know what I mean? And 1.8 centimeters works pretty well for most fabrics. If you're doing something a bit heavier, maybe you do a bit less. And you could add more if you're doing something really lightweight, like tulle. But 1.8 centimeters total is a pretty good guide for ease for a really fitted sleeve. So, just to recap, these are the measurements I've used for the demonstration. And these are the ones the McQueen Fear dress block uses. Now before you run and grab a pen, remember the McQueen block is really fitted. The style value is 2.6, which is very tailored. and all these curves create a lot of ease, which might not work for your design. The more fitted your sleeve is, the more ease you need to go around the shoulder here to create that round shape. But as you decrease the cap height and change the angle of the sleeve coming into the armhole, the curve isn't as intense, so you need less ease. On the McQueen sleeve, there is 2.7 centimeters of ease on the front and 2.5 centimeters of ease on the back. So that is a lot of ease you need to get into your armhole. And it would only really work if you were using a lightweight fabric like tulle. If you use a medium or heavier fabric, you would see all the gathering of the ease. So now you've seen the measurements for a fitted and very fitted sleeve. So let's look at something looser. These are the measurements I would use for a style value of 4, so a loose blouse. And you can see the measurements are actually quite similar to a fitted style value, but the change in cap height completely changes the shape of the curves. For a traditional t-shirt, so a loose, not fitted one, the style value is 6, so you're dividing the total armhole measurement by 6. And you can see the measurements I'm using to get my curves are a lot less. And if you look at the curves, which I drew with my French curve, the back is still slightly bigger at the top and the front is more curved at the bottom. And please feel free to take screenshots of all these measurements, or you can grab a little notebook like this one and write them all down. This is the notebook I actually started when I started studying fashion a long time ago now, and I still refer back to it. And last, we have the sweatshirt. So the style value is 8, so it has a smaller cap height than the t-shirt. And you see the measurements are less again. It is still curved though. If your armhole is curved, you need curves on the sleeve. You can have sleeves that aren't curved. Think of a traditional kimono, but you'll see the armhole isn't curved either. Okay, so that is everything you need to know about cap height and lots of different measurements so you can make the right sleeve head for your design. So I think that's actually kind of the hard part done, so let me show you how to finish off the rest of your sleeve. Before I add the length, I'm going to find my center line, which I'll also make my grain line. My armholes weren't the same measurement. Sometimes they are, and that's great. Sometimes they aren't. Just depends on where your shoulder seam is. So I'm going to measure the length of my underarm line, which is 30.8 centimeters, and divide it by 2 to find the center point, which is 15.4 centimeters. So I'll mark the center, and then I'll draw a perpendicular line up and down my pattern piece and put 2 arrows on it, going in the same direction. So that's my center line and the grain line. I'm going to create a full length sleeve, finishing at the wrist. The standard length I use for sleeves starting at the shoulder bone, so not dropped, and finishing at the wrist is 60 centimeters. If you're making the sleeve for you, measure your own arm. If your armhole is dropped, so the sleeve isn't starting at the shoulder bone, you'll need to make the sleeve length smaller. Also, think about where you want your sleeve to finish. It doesn't have to be at the wrist. If you're doing something more oversized, maybe you want it to go underneath the wrist or even down at the knuckles, make it your own. Mark your length on the center line and then draw a perpendicular line coming out from it. Now I'm going to mark my elbow line. It's always good to have this line as a reference when you're creating your patterns. If your sleeve is fitted and finishing at the wrist, like mine, the elbow is almost halfway between the wrist and the underarm. So I'll measure my line between the underarm line and the wrist, and then divide it in half. Then the elbow line is about 2 centimeters closer to the underarm line. So I'll measure down and mark it and draw a perpendicular line coming out. Now let's decide our sleeve hem circumference. If your sleeve is finishing at the wrist and you don't want to have any openings at the underarm seam, you'll need to make sure your sleeve can get over your hand. So I recommend about a minimum of 22 centimeters for the hem circumference of your sleeve. If you want something smaller than that, then you'll need to add some sort of opening to the bottom of the underarm seam. So I'd recommend a sort of 8 centimeter bound keyhole opening or a little zip. I'm going to do 22 centimeters, so I'll just measure 11 centimeters out from the center line on both sides. Now I'll connect the top and the bottom of the sleeve. To do this, I want you to place your ruler at the sleeve hem point and put the other end of the ruler about 2 centimeters in from the underarm point. Then start drawing a line from the hem to the elbow. As you pass the elbow, start slowly rotating the ruler. Keep drawing and rotate the ruler till it reaches the underarm point. This is just a really easy trick to help you remove a bit of excess under the arm. It's very subtle and you can do it for oversized shirts too. It just makes it a bit cleaner. It also creates a 90-degree angle at the top here, which always looks better when you sew it. Now, copy this line exactly to the other side of your pattern by folding the pattern along the center line and tracing over the line with your tracing wheel. Then, draw over the line with a pencil. The underarm seams should be completely symmetrical. Cool, we're almost done. We just need to add some notches at the elbow line and on the sleeve head. The notches on the sleeve head need to match the armhole, so I'll grab my front and back patterns and measure the distance between the notches. Then, I'll mark the same distance on my pattern. For a fitted style, the first notch should be about 6 or 7 centimeters from the underarm. And I like to have a second notch. The first 2 sections of the armhole match the sleeve perfectly, but the top section of the sleeve is bigger than the armhole. That's because of the ease. And this is why I like to have a second notch near the top, so you can control where the ease is sewn. And it should be sewn in the top third of your sleeve head. And now I'll do my back armhole. To mark the ease, I draw an arrowed line along the section and write 1 centimeter ease. You can just write ease, but I like to include the amount so my machinist knows. And I'll mark the ease in the back. It was 0.8 centimeters of ease. Before I add my seam allowances, I'll show you how to finish the hem. If you want your sleeve to have a larger self-faced hem, just draw a parallel line 3 or 4 centimeters down. Then fold the pattern along the end of the sleeve, so where it will be folded when it's sewn, and mark where the underarm seam is along the fold. Why do we do this? We want the hem facing to be the same shape as the sleeve. Otherwise, you'll feel a tight, smaller edge inside. And if your sleeve is really fitted, it will be too small to go over your hand. Then, just draw a line to connect this point with your fold line on the hem, and then write fold line along the hem. However, if you want a small hem, perhaps it's going to be pin hemmed or bound, I want you to do this. Remember how we spoke about 90 degrees looking good when you sew them? Look at how your sleeve looks when you sew it now. There is a dip at the underarm seam. If you have a large faced hem, you can't fix this because you can't fold a large hem along a curve. But if you have a small 1 centimeter hem, you can. So we'll reshape the hem slightly by bringing it down about 0.5 centimeters at the underarm seam. Then blend this point with the original hemline. The hem is now slightly curved and meets at the underarm seam at a 90-degree angle. And then you just copy the line exactly the same shape to the other side. The sleeve hem, like the underarm seam, should be symmetrical. Then just add a 1 centimeter seam allowance. When the hem is done, you can add 1 centimeter seam allowances to the rest of the sleeve. Okay, so that's how I draft a perfect fitted sleeve. But as I said, I'm going to give myself a little fitting challenge and mess up my sleeve head. Okay, so here's my sleeve. I've cut it out in calico and attached it to my front and back pieces. And you can see it's looking a little bit funny, especially at the top here and the bottom. There's a fair bit of excess, which is pretty consistent with what I did to the pattern. As you can see, I added a bit to the underarm on both sides and add a bit at the top. So there should be excess on the pattern. So what we'll do is we'll just pin the excess out. And what I like to do is, when I'm fitting a sleeve, is sort of put it at the angle that it's meant to be sitting at, so the right angle for its cap height. And as you can see, so it's not very fitted, so there's lots of baggy bits there. This is kind of the angle that it kind of wants to sit at, so just kind of stop when it starts crunching at the top here. So if that's the angle, I can just sort of pin out this excess here. So I'm just pinning to sort of 0. And I'll do that on the back here too. Be careful not to overpin. You do need to be able to move, so I'd often put it on a mannequin and then put it on a body so you can test how it actually feels when you wear it. At the underarm here, underarm's always a bit tricky to do. I'll just sort of see where it's sitting and just pin out a bit here. and on the back. Actually, what might be easier is if I get a pen, I can just draw directly on it because I'm taking such small bits off. It can just be to sort of press into the seam here and mark what I want to remove. So this is kind of it's quite tight here, so I can even add a little bit if I wanted to. And I'm going to stop the video right here. I'm so sorry, but I realized post-production, because my sleeve only had excess, I never showed you how to fix tight areas. So to fix tight areas, you need to add more fabric. And there are two ways you can do this. Firstly, you can release the armhole seam. So either unpin or unpick it. You only need to release the section that is tight. So where those stress lines, and they're usually pointing in towards the section you need to release. Once the seam is released, adjust the sleeve till the stress lines disappear. You can do this by lightly pulling the fabric away from the armhole. Then you can repin the armhole and mark your new seam line on the sleeve. So your new seam line will be somewhere in the old seam allowance. The second option is to cut into the toile and pin fabric behind it. So essentially you're applying the slash and spread technique to your toile. You can cut along the armhole, pin some fabric behind it, adjust the sleeve till the stress lines are gone, and then pin the sleeve to the fabric underneath. And let's get back to the video. Now the underarm here, just sort of smooth it in there. So I'm just kind of pushing the fabric and then pushing it so it goes over the seam, and then just drawing a line there. And I often put a notch, which I won't carry through the pattern, but just a notch to say like, okay, this is going to be 0. So I don't need to take anything off there. Cool. So once I'm kind of happy with that, what I'll do is just take the toile sleeve off, put it over my pattern again, and then just trace over those lines with a tracing wheel, and then I'll draw the lines on the pattern and the sleeve will be done. And if you want to, you can always retwile it to test it again, and I probably recommend doing it once on a mannequin and then twiling it again in your final fabric on your own body. So I've shown you how to pick your cap height, how to create a range of different sleeves for different styles, and now you know how to fit your sleeve perfectly. So you are ready. There is no reason to be scared of sleeves anymore. You've got this. And once you follow these steps and create a really great base sleeve, you can then go on to make beautiful voluminous designs. We can add tucks and a cuff and make a really cool shirt block. I should probably do some videos on that. Let me know what you want to see in the comments. What do you want to do with your sleeve now that you've got it? And also subscribe to my channel. I've got so many more pattern cutting videos coming up, including this one.